So really, from what you can see behind us, you'll see this very natural yellow sand appearing, and you'll see this going right the way through the site. This is the actual level of the medieval sand dune that underlies the whole site. Now you can see very natural beach sands. I mean, this was probably a beach about 6,000–7,000 years ago when it was underwater. After a few thousand years after the last ice age, the sea level rose quite dramatically and receded after that as well. So it's round about, I think, around about 4,000 BC. But what we've got right in front of me is actually probably one of the oldest features on site at the moment, and you can just see this sort of darker semicircular sort of D shape, and you can actually, if you follow my finger, you can see where half the pit has been excavated. Now this pit underlay the gravel surface which you think was here when the wall behind us, which was revealed about a month ago, is the original graveyard wall from about 1480 to go with the church. So this pit has to predate that period. I don't think there's any finds coming from it, but some of the soils around it have produced some medieval pottery. One of the more interesting things we're looking at is, although we're very close to the medieval town itself, I mean it's only just behind the church over there, we're getting very few finds from the topsoil. We'd expect a lot more in terms of finds just being that close, but we're only getting handfuls of pottery coming up and a couple of finds which we'll discuss later on. But some of the pottery we are getting goes back to the 13th and 14th century. Just looking at the walls behind us, trying to make some sense of it. And as I said, we've got this wall here, which is definitely clay bonded, which I said seems almost certainly to go with the original church. You can see how it was upstanding originally, probably maybe a metre and a half tall originally, but you've got these soils being banked up against it over time. Now this series of walls which you might come through was kind of at an odd angle. This sort of rubble you can see here, mortar bonded. Looking at some of the map evidence, I think this could be part of a series of crypts which are shown on the maps of the mid-18th century and may have been cut through when they put the road in 1790. So it's really sort of an angle going off in this sort of direction here, or maybe just one of the edges of the series of earlier 18th century, maybe possibly 17th century crypts. So we're trying to get really get a better understanding of how the site is formed on this location. Now we sort of pan down, you can see the natural sands coming up and how it's sort of gently the eye of faith. You can see the yellow sand, natural sand, slowly going off in a shallow dip into the distance to the north. So we've almost completed the excavation in this area. What we have to do is just take back the soil against the piles there, and you can see Amanda and Araya discussing possibly the last burial in this area. Now, for the burials in this area we think all date from the church, which was built in 1480 through to around about 1650. So there's been a lot of work being done in here. There's really getting a really good picture of what we're understanding the soil makeup and the sort of makeup of the graveyard. Well, we've moved down to the middle of the excavations here, and you can see from behind us there's been a lot of work obviously been done over the last month or so, and we're starting to reveal more about the makeup of the graveyard and possibly some evidence of the construction of the church back in 1480. Just behind Alan and Amelia, you can see in the bulb, the section, a sort of half a metre thick band of sort of rubble and mortar. I'll show you a bit. That also had bits of evidence of broken up tiles, roofing slates. So it's possible evidence for the construction of the church in 1480, sort of rubble that's been brought in to level up the site. We've obviously taken up quite a few bodies here, but the more interesting potentially is this series of 3 graves at the moment being excavated by Ilya, and they're actually in a slightly different alignment. Most of them are quite, as you can see, Alan's digging them more traditionally good east-west alignment. These are now on a sort of an angle of about 45 degrees to them, so they're obviously being buried at the same time and respecting each other. How old they are at the moment, obviously we don't know, but it's looking at different uses in the graveyards at different periods of time, and maybe a different group of people coming in. As you can see, it's digging up this adult, possibly an adult male. You can see it's been cut through by a whole load of services just here, so it's been heavily not a very good condition. But you can see the angle of it going up at 45 degrees, whereas the grave just off to my left is actually a lot more traditional east-west alignment. So you can see you've got this one here, 1, 2, 3, all very similar grave cuts. In fact, they're very sort of standard sort of rectangular graves, very well sharp edges and cut, and look like they've all been cut by at the same time. It'd be interesting to see if you could relate them together and how they actually form. But they're also very discrete patch of burials. There's not a lot of intercutting in these ones. I was saying earlier that we don't get a lot of finds from this. Obviously, we've got the human remains, but we are getting some finds. We've got some medieval pot from Scotland, but interesting, we've got 2 finds which actually show international connections, both from Holland. Now, one is found today, and this is what I'm holding in my right hand. It's a shard from it's a Dutch redware, possibly from a skillet or cooking vessel, probably about that size. But what we know is from Dutch is a very well-known fabric, common import actually in Leith and Edinburgh and Scotland. In fact, it's got a very distinctive red, sort of brick red fabric with this red, big shiny red glaze on it. Just see partially. Now, it's an interesting angle, but we think it just got here. It's possibly the end of the handle coming through. The rim of it's quite where the glaze is coming across. Now, these sort of date to the 17th century, largely late 16th and 17th century in Edinburgh. But also, along with this, which has just been found today, is we have this very interesting find. Now, I was talking earlier, through most excavations in Edinburgh, we have very few coins coming up. People are very careful of the coins, but what we have here is quite an interesting coin, in that it's actually, coincidentally, it's Dutch. It's actually from sort of northern Holland. Dates to quite a common type of coin, but dates to 1628. So this is must have come. It's just been floating around in the topsoil, so it's a stray find. But again, it's this links with the North Sea, Hanseatic, the Dutch Low Countries and Lower Rhineland. So we're getting a lot of trades. It's possibly comes from a merchant or whatever, it's coming up in trade and just lost it in the graveyard soil. So it adds that sort of connection, proof of connection between Edinburgh and what is now present day Holland. Well, we're just really, although we'd be concentrating mostly on the southern half of the graveyard, but work has obviously been continuing on the northern half, but to slightly less degree, so we're really getting into the meat of it. So you can see quite a lot of work has been done excavating human remains here, still ongoing. But just behind me, you always see this very dark splotch. I don't know if you can see, you've got yellow sand just off to the right, which is the natural dune sand. But obviously it dips down, you've got this darker material still carrying on under this middle section. And we know that this is the deepest part of the graveyard from our previous excavation in 2008. So there's going to be a lot more work probably in here, a concentration of burials, potentially up to 7 deep. So we're maybe halfway through that at the moment. But one of the other things we also get in here is some sand quarry pits of the medieval period. So this may turn out to be a large pit that's unrelated to the graveyard. Time will tell on that one. But if you move behind me, you can just see the natural dune sand sort of slowly rising up. You can just see put just over here with the team are excavating the remains of a burial there. But just slowly going up, sort of darker patch in the middle, which is probably deeper graveyard soils, and then just in the far distance, with the faith of eye, you can just see the natural sands coming up to the top. So there's going to be a lot less excavation up there, but it still has human remains turning up. So we're sort of quite far on, but the next month and a half will be key to understanding the site as well.
Lovely. Thank you very much, John.